Hey everybody, we're going to look a little bit more at elements of drama. We're going to go through this flip chart together and take some notes. Okay, our essential questions that we ask about drama are: how does drama provide the reader a different experience? So reading a drama is completely different than reading a short story or a novel or a piece of poetry. So how is drama different? And then we want to look at how is reading a drama different than watching something on TV or watching it actually being performed on the stage. Okay, so first of all, drama comes from the Greek word dran, which means to do or to act. So Greeks were the first people that we have record of that produced and performed dramas. The first ones that we found were written about the 5th century BC. And the Greeks produced them for the festivals that they had to honor Dionysus, who was the Greek god of wine and fertility. Drama is a story told in front of an audience. That's what its main purpose is. It's to be performed. You have a version and an adaptation of drama. When we talk about a different version, it's almost like talking about a story written from a different point of view. It's a description or account from one point of view, especially as opposed to another. So maybe you have one version where the story is being told by a narrator, and you have another version where there isn't a narrator, and maybe it's seen more through the eyes of one of the characters. An adaptation is when you take like a short story and you turn it into a play or a script. So it's when you recast something into a new form. So the beginning of the year we did children's stories like Cinderella, and it would be like, what if we took Cinderella and we wrote that into a script and performed it? Elements of drama. So when you look at a drama, you have these different parts of it. First, you have a playwright. That's a term you need to know. That's the person who wrote the play. Then you have actors. Those are the people who perform the play. You also have, within the play, you have acts and you have scenes. Acts have to do with the major units of action in the play. And then the scenes have to do with any time you change location or you change time. And sometimes when the scenes change, you change both time and place. Okay, when you look at the different types of speeches that are given in the dialogue, sometimes you have what's called a prologue, and of course this too comes from the Greek word pro, which means before, and logos or logic. So those two words go together. It's a speech made at the beginning before the story starts, usually made by a narrator. Sometimes it can be given by one of the characters. But it establishes kind of like the backstory, tells you where the setting is, and it can give you some background information that you need to know to understand the opening of the play. Then, once the curtain opens, you have what's called the dialogue, which is the conversation between the two characters. And if one character is by themselves on stage and they make a pretty long speech, and they tell you their private thoughts, or sometimes it's the thoughts that are going on inside their head, like a conversation that they want to have with another character. They may talk to that character, although the character's not there. It's kind of like a rehearsal out loud of what they would like to say to that person. It's called the monologue. Mono meaning one. Sometimes you have what's called an aside. And you think about, I look at it and it kind of has the word side, so I think of it as to the side. It's when you have two situations. You have one character that turns to the side to another character, and he says something out loud so that the audience can hear, but it's kind of like in real life it would have been a whisper where no one else can hear it. But of course, the information that the character's saying is meant for the audience to hear, so it has to be loud. And it's one of those dramatic conventions. It's just understood that the other character or characters on stage does not hear it. Otherwise, one of the characters can turn to the audience and speak directly to the audience and say something to them that they want the audience to know about the other character on stage, and it's a convention that no one thinks the other character heard. So for me, looking at it, the key word here is turns to the side. They either talk to the audience or to another character on stage. Okay, so then we go to talking about the conflict in the story. Every drama has conflict. It has a problem. The main characters will have some type of struggle that they're going to have to try to solve. You can have an external conflict when it's between two people or some outside forces, or it can be an internal conflict when someone's trying to deal with some feelings, something negative that has happened to them, they're worried. It's a conflict on the inside. This particular problem is what creates the dramatic tension. It's what creates an actual story that we want to pay attention to. Otherwise, there's no story and it would just be people talking and it would be boring. Okay, so when you look at stage directions, that's the next thing we want to talk about. A stage is divided up into 9 basic areas, and it's all from the actor's perspective. So if you're looking at the box here, you see downstage. So that is the part of the stage closest to the audience. And in some stages, it actually slopes downward. This is higher than that part. And it slopes this direction. It's called a raked stage, R-A-K-E-D, raked. So it goes down. So theoretically, if you put a ball here and let it go, or a marble, it would roll this direction. So that's why this part is called upstage, and the part closest to the audience is called downstage. Since it's from the actor's perspective, as you look at it, we call this part stage left and this part stage right. And you're thinking, but this is my right. No, it's from the actor's perspective. So you have 9 areas: upstage right, right center, and downstage right. And these are just terms that they put into the script so the actors know where they're supposed to be, what part of the stage the action's supposed to take place. Okay, so moving on. When we talk about stage directions in a script, they're the instructions for the actors. Sometimes they're instructions for the directors. Could be instructions for the stage crew, like the lighting people or the sound people. When are the lights supposed to go up? When do they get dim? When do we put a spot on a particular character to draw attention to them? When does the phone ring? That would be a cue for the sound people. When do we have music? Okay, so as we've talked about it before, stage directions often appear in parentheses or brackets. Sometimes they're an italic type, and sometimes they're both in italics and in parentheses. It also tells the actors when they're supposed to move, like if they're supposed to enter the stage, when they exit the stage, if they're supposed to move over closer to another character. Gives them suggestions on how to say the lines, what emotions they should have. All right, so let's talk about theaters for a minute. Okay, so the theater is where the play takes place. And you have 3 different kind of theaters we're going to talk about. This one's called a thrust stage, and if you look at it, the theater goes out into the audience. It extends into the viewing area, and audience members can sit on all 3 sides of the stage, on each side and in the front. So the audience kind of surrounds it 3/4 of the way. Another type of stage is called the round stage, or theater in the round. And if you look at this picture right here, it's a circle, and so the audience can sit all the way around the stage. It kind of presents a problem sometimes for actors because you have to make sure that the action takes place in different spots so that you don't put your back to one part of the audience all of the time. Then we have what's known as the proscenium stage, and this is more popular, especially like if you think about our stage down in the auditorium. It's a proscenium stage. Most of the time they have an arc like that, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's actually a square across the top. But the most important thing is it has a curtain, and it has this part right here called the lip. It's the edge of the stage. And you can actually close the curtains and have some of the action take place, like if it was an action on a street, you can have a street down here. Sometimes a monologue will be made in front of the curtain. while the curtains close, then you have the stage crew in the back changing the set, and when the curtain opens, it's a new location. So the audience sits out here on one side, and they look through this area, and they only get to see it from one side. Okay, talking about scene design. When you design a scene, you have the elements of the set, you have lighting, you have costumes, and you have props. So all of these things have to be decided upon by the director and the crew. The set or the scenery, it's construction on the stage, and it helps set the setting. It helps us know what time period and where it's taking place. And if you see this particular picture, you've got an indoor setting. You notice the Christmas trees, so you know it's December. It's a house that has upstairs. So you have big pieces like you have door units, you have window units, you have the stairs, you have the chairs and the table. So they're any type of big pieces of furniture, curtains, flats, backdrops, anything used to help us understand where the story is taking place. That's called the set. Lighting, and you have a light director, and you have a lighting crew that uses lighting to change the mood or the appearance of the set. So this one, notice the red floodlight on this chair in this scene creates a special mood. The lighting can be, you can light one area of the stage or a portion of the stage, or you can have a spotlight on one character. And what that does is draw the audience's attention to one part, and the other part is dark. Sometimes you have crew members that are changing the set in the dark part while we're focused on the action that's going on in the spotlight. Then you also have costumes and costume designers, and they work closely with the director to design costumes to fit the period. And costumes can be anything from very, very detailed to minimal. And then we have props. Those are the things that can be held in the hand. The actors can carry them on stage and do action with them, or they can bring them off stage. They're movable. And they make the actions on the stage of the character look real. It makes them look like they are a real doctor or a real maid or a real nurse. So it's little things that they can carry on that makes their character look believable. Then the director is responsible for characterization, and so is the playwright. The playwright uses techniques to create believable characters, and there's indirect characterization where we kind of figure it out based on their actions and what other people say about them. And then there's just direct characterization with their costuming, how they act on stage, and what they say about themselves. So you've got indirect and you've got direct characterization. Types of drama, 3 basic types. Notice the drama mask. Notice that there's one that's smiling and one that's frowning. So those are the 2 basic, comedy and tragedy. But you also have what's called a history drama. Okay, this type of drama has to do with some historical event or a historical person, and it can be funny and it can be tragic, but it's basically about history. So here we have a comedy. Okay, so we know that comedy is funny, it has a happy ending, it uses humor with the dialogue and the situations, and sometimes the actions of the characters themselves. The characters do things that are funny and silly on stage. Then we have drama that's tragic. So the tragedy is something where the main character has a downfall. The main character is usually the hero of the story. They can be a king, someone of great significance, but something happens to them. They lose something. They lose their life, the life of a loved one. They go from having great power to they lose the power. So it's something that at the very end, it's usually a sad ending. And of course, you see the picture of Romeo and Juliet, one of the most classic types of tragedy ever. And that brings us to the end. Thank you very much for watching.